All right, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Tetrafolium, you lost your god dang mind. You're watching too much TikTok. You're brain rotted. What the hell is this video about? And I'm here to tell you that actually I don't watch TikTok, but I have plenty of YouTube shorts to rot my brain, and this is the ADV Baby Gronk situation. You might notice that Sableye is prominently featured on the screen, such as is Jackie Chan there, but uh, we won't be talking much about Jackie Chan. We will be talking a lot about Sableye. So, this is a funny video for me to unveil this, but I mean, I guess I'm not really the one unveiling it. It's credit to Gold Mason for announcing this on Smogon, but this is the viability rankings for 2025. It came literally in the last month of the year, so thankfully it got out eventually. But we have some changes here. I'm not going to go over them too much. If you want, I can do a little bit of a reaction to this, but I mean, I don't think there's that much that has changed. One of the biggest changes is that Blissey is now considered number 3, up from number 6 last year, which is kind of crazy. Dugtrio's up a little bit, Celebi's down a little bit, Moltres has fallen down a lot, but I guess really the big talking points are Raikou and Registeel making their way up into the basically OU tier. Now, it's not official that they're OU, but I would not be shocked if they do officially become OU within this year or this coming year. So, look forward to that, everybody who is big on slop gaming. Also, one thing that I think is really cool is Vaporeon made it to D tier, which is really cool. It validates me because I said that Vaporeon is the 3rd best UUBL when I did my viability rankings. So apparently I'm not the only one who thinks that. But Sableye is not on this list. It is, however, on this list, the E tier. So it's ranked number 51, which is honestly not that bad. As compared to things like, I don't know, Weezing and Blaziken, who get sparing use. Sableye's got a little bit of a niche right there. Though, I guess not fantastic of a niche. It's the 4th highest ranked dark type below Tyranitar, obviously, Umbreon, and Houndoom. It is, how many ghost types? You have Gengar, Misdreavus, and Dusclops ranked higher than it, but frankly, that's not that bad. Before we get going with the Baby Gronk discussion, to sort of ground this video a little bit, our comment question is going to be, who's your favorite Mega Evolution? And a little follow-up is, which Pokemon should get one next? For me, honestly, Sableye was one of my favorite Mega Evolutions to play with, especially in Gen 6, when the priority bracket system and speed with the Mega Evolutions was kind of weird, so that you could get like a prankster boosted move off with your Sableye on the turn that you Mega Evolved. I thought that was really cool, and I love the way that it interacted with that. Now, it was a bad thing for some Pokemon, like Mega Banette would prefer to get the prankster right away, but and all the Pokemon that have a major speed boost when they Mega Evolve would love to have that right away, but I thought it was really interesting with Sableye. So I would probably say that it is my favorite Mega Evolution. If I had to pick another one, I guess maybe, I mean, Lopunny's pretty cool. It's a pretty strong Pokemon with its Mega Evolution. But I don't know. Mega Sableye was the one for me, which maybe tells you a lot about the kind of teams that I like to play in Gen 6 and 7 before Sableye got banned from, I think, Gen 7. So, let's move on. So, alright, I've stalled long enough. You're probably wondering, why am I talking about the Baby Gronk situation. And I'm not going to lie to you, I'm too employed to really understand what the mainstream Baby Gronk meme is all about. As far as I know, he's just some kid who plays football, and I guess he's got like some similarities to Gronk, Rob Gronkowski. I don't even know if Baby Gronk is a tight end, frankly. So I don't know if there's much that goes on with it there. But when it comes to the ADV Baby Gronk situation, I do know a lot about this. So, fellow commentators of mine, if you have watched Replay of the Week 21, both of these commentators were on that. Played in Mushi League, which is a team tour series. In season 13, X-Tina played against a rookie Z Panther in week 6, which is the final week of the regular season. And X-Tina decided that she was going to bring Sableye, and she nicknamed it Baby Gronk. So X-Tina, as the story goes, was afflicted with the COVID-19 virus. She bet that Z Panther was going to bring Snorlax to counter her tendency to run special offense teams. And in fact, the team that Z Panther brought, according to his memory, was Curse, Return, Focus Punch, Rest, Snorlax, Fortress, Houndoom, and then also maybe Pert, Mence, and Breloom. He seemed less sure about that when I asked. And as legend has it, Sableye felted Z Panther's squad to earn X-Tina a decisive Game 2 victory and to clinch the set to 0. So I don't know exactly what felted means. I'm assuming that it meant that Sableye did a lot of work in that matchup, and it seems like it would, right? Because that Snorlax can't touch a ghost type, especially not Sableye. Fortress doesn't really have a great matchup into Sableye. Houndoom, okay, maybe, but it's not like gonna pursuit trap Sableye at all as far as the ghost types go. Breloom is pretty much walled. Swampert, depending on the Sableye set, may still lose that matchup, and then Mence is, like, also not fantastic into Sableye. I mean, it's better than everything else, and I would say that Mence usually wins in a one-on-one, but it doesn't love to take a knockoff or a toxic or anything like that. So, Sableye had a fantastic matchup into that team, and Baby Gronk, it kind of stuck as a sort of pseudonym for Sableye. So, yeah. There's a little meme that kind of puts it all together here. I think these power scaling memes are funny. So, if you want to talk about them in the comments, please do. But let's move on. Oh wait, I guess we're not really moving on because look at all these people paying homage to Baby Gronk. I want to draw particular attention to Colin, saying that Livy Dunn just left Baby Gronk for him. So congratulations, Colin. I hope that it all worked out for you. I know this is 2 years too late, but maybe we can see your 2-year anniversary or whatever, if that's still going on for you. So to stop with the memeing, let's talk a little bit more particularly about what Sableye is going to do in the ADV tier. It's an NU ranked Pokemon, I believe, so you probably have not seen a lot of Sableye unless you're chronically on Jimothy Cool / Revival tournaments and you watch a lot of ABR type teams. ABR does love to cook with Sableye, so you may have seen it in that context. But I'm going to explain sort of the ins and out of Sableye as we go along with this video. So, as you've probably seen in my Armaldo video or my Hariyama video talking about knockoff as this progress-making move in ADV, it does the following for you. It's a Dark-type move, which means special damage, low base power, 100 accuracy, unable to make a Pokemon's item unusable if it's blocked by Substitute, But note the way that I said that is that it makes a Pokemon's item unusable. It does not get rid of their item, like Thief, for example. That's a important distinction because that means if you knock a Pokemon's item off and they have some means of switching their item, like for example Trick or Thief, they will not be able to get that item exchange to work. It just means like they have a bricked item slot, which is even more powerful than getting rid of the item entirely. Because of limited item choice and prevalence of permanent sandstorm in ADV because of Tyranitar, who is, as we saw earlier, the #1 Pokemon in the tier, Leftovers is by far the most common item, and making Leftovers unusable can force sand-weak Pokemon to take residual damage. It also stops sand-immune Pokemon from recovering HP, so they can't really chip heal out of range of certain things that they may have been chipped into. A great example would be like, say, Metagross, right? Metagross has some pretty nice bulk, and it can take some hits pretty well, but say it takes like a Thunderbolt from an offensive Zapdos that does like 56%. Well, that Metagross is going to need to get a few turns of chip healing to make sure that it can get itself out of range so that it could do something again, given that the Zapdos is going to T-Bolt. But if you're able to knock those Leftovers off, well, that chip healing is not going to happen for Metagross, and it will never be able to survive that Thunderbolt again, which could afford you the opportunity to sweep with Zapdos. That's just one of many examples of how knockoff can be really nice for you. But let's talk about the users. These are some of the more common users. There are, of course, others like Kingler. I mean, that's basically it. But yeah, so you're probably going to be using one of these. Here's a little bit of a base stat comparison for you. Obviously, Alakazam is not the best defensively for making use of knockoff, but it does have the highest speed by a very wide margin of all of these Pokemon. So sometimes being able to get a fast knock could be really important. Say, for example, your opponent is sweeping you with a Choice Banded Pokemon, and you don't have a Pokemon that can live a Choice Banded hit. Well, you could maybe bring in Alakazam to knock that item off. You'll trade that Alakazam down. It's probably going to die to a physical move, let's be honest. But maybe then you have a Pokemon on your team that survives a physical hit because there's no more Choice Band boost, and you might be able to reverse sweep from there. It's a possibility. You'll see mostly if Alakazam is using knockoff, it'll be in the lead slot, and it's going to be spamming Thunder Wave. It's probably got screens, and yeah, it's kind of an interesting set. It's a little bit out there, but then again, so is Alakazam just as a Pokemon. We have Hariyama, who has been getting a lot of slander from a lot of players. I think if we went back to the E tier, it is kind of slid down by a pretty fair degree. It used to be arguably king of the UUBLs, or at least considered that, and now it's probably not even top 5. Or the consensus is that it is not top 5 among the UUBLs. So that kind of sucks, but one of the things that made it so highly regarded was its ability to knock off. And frankly, I think Hariyama is quite good at using knockoff. It's got a lot of bulk, particularly HP, so it can survive a lot of hits and be able to get that knock off. Pun obviously intended. So it's kind of the prototypical knocker. Now there's Armaldo as well, which a lot of people are arguing that Armaldo is actually the better knockoff user between the two, Armaldo and Hariyama, of course. And that's due to its ability to resist normal type moves, at least in part. It's also a little bit more threatening with its Rock Stab. Rock is a little bit more valuable as an offensive type or at least I should say the combination of rock and bug is more valuable than mono fighting. So Armaldo is given a little bit more respect by a lot of the sort of more skilled gamers. I don't think that there's a unreasonable argument that Hariyama is better than Armaldo, but I do think that the consensus now is that Armaldo is better, at least for the purpose of knocking off. Though I do think that that's kind of inflating the importance of knockoff versus specifically Snorlax. You know, Armaldo is really good at walling Snorlax, and being able to knock that off means that it is going to basically indefinitely wall Snorlax, and Snorlax will eventually just lose, especially if Sand is up. But I do think that Hariyama lures in some other targets for knockoff that Armaldo can't quite handle, say, like, for example, Suicune. So, you know, there's a little bit of give and take there. The man of the hour, Baby Gronk, Sableye, is the only one of these that gets stabbed. That doesn't really matter because knockoff is such a weak move comparatively. So I don't think that it really cares about that. If you did care about damage for knockoff, then we would be using knockoff on Jinx, who has the highest special attack of most knock users. I guess Alakazam is literally right there. It has the highest special attack of any Pokemon that can use knockoff, but just using Jinx as a sort of example there. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely going to be more for its defensive utility. And then there's Banette as well. It's kind of interesting that two ghost types get knockoff, but I will tell you this: due to their traits, Sableye is so much better at taking advantage of knockoff. If you're not sure why that is, you should go watch my Banette video where I make a little bit more of a discussion out of why I don't think knockoff is a fantastic move for Banette. But in short, I think it's a little bit of a pace mismatch. You usually want to have room for something like Taunt instead to take advantage of Banette's slightly higher speed stat as compared to the other knockoff users, and to stop opposing bulky Pokemon from being able to use their really valuable status moves, like, for example, Soft Boiled with Blissey, or Thunder Wave with Blissey, or Spikes with Skarmory, and so on and so forth. So, of all these Pokemon, I've listed Sableye as really the only defensively inclined one. I do think that there are defensively inclined sets for both Hariyama and Armaldo, but they kind of fit more into like the tank kind of archetype rather than the wall, where Sableye I think is more of a wall, despite the fact that it's got just objectively inferior stats, especially when you compare it to Armaldo. So why do I say that? Well, it kind of comes down to two things. The first is, well, let's just look at these offensive stats. Yeah, that's not really lighting the world on fire. Now, granted, it's not like the defensive stats are super duper great either, but 75 base attack, 50 base speed is not really a great offensive threat. 65 base special attack is like a meme, basically. Like, what are you going to do with that? The most charitable roles I could find for you is if we had, say, a plus attack, max investment Sableye going for Shadow Ball into an offensive Starmie, then we have about a 25% chance to OHKO, which is kind of pitiful, really. You're taking a Pokemon as frail as Starmie and using Stab, super effective move with your max investment, and you're not even favored to get the one-shot kill, which is not great. As far as coverage moves goes, Sableye does have access to Brick Break, but that doesn't even get close to one-shotting a Tyranitar. And this is not even a bulky Tyranitar. This is just your standard offensive EV spread. So, yeah, Sableye, not really gonna be a good attacker, just period. While the Ghost fighting coverage is really synergistic and very good in theory, Sableye has virtually no way to bolster its mediocre attack and low speed to leverage that coverage. You know, maybe if it had, like, Dragon Dance, it could do something with that, but even then, like, I don't know if it would be a fantastic Dragon Dancer. It does have the nice coverage for that, though, in theory. You don't get access to Bulk Up. I don't think Sableye even gets access to Curse, but even if it did, it wouldn't matter because you would get the Ghost-type variant of Curse, which would be abysmal for Sableye. So, yeah, I don't think you should be looking so much for Sableye to do much offensively. But defensively speaking, even though it does have kind of subpar stats, it does have access to immediate recovery, and that can help it leverage some of its defensive advantages. So, Recover, of course, I mean, you should be familiar with what this move does. Even if you don't play ADV, it gives you 50% of your HP back when you use it. In ADV, though, it has 32 PP, so you can do a lot with Recover. You can literally run a Pokemon out of, like, 2 moves that it has, just spamming Recover, because it's got so much god-dang PP. I don't know who thought that was a good idea. But you might be saying, okay, Alakazam gets Recover as well, but it has a pitiful 45 base defense and a subpar defensive type in Psychic, which does not have very many great resistances. What do you have? You're resistant to Psychic, of course, and Fighting, I guess. It's not all that valuable, considering that every fighting type is going to be running Ghost or Bug coverage anyway. Yeah, you're always getting hit for some incredible amount of damage. While Sableye, on the other hand, has maybe one of the best defensive types. It's kind of hard to say, but uniquely to this generation, Ghost Dark is the only type combo that exists that is unable to be hit for super effective damage. Now, of course, there are some theoretical combos like Electric with Levitate, or I don't know, like Poison Dark with Levitate, but those don't exist in ADV. There's no Pokemon that has that combination of traits. So Sableye is the only one that is not able to be hit for super effective damage. This is what you're weak to, obviously, is nothing. You're immune to 3 types in normal fighting and psychic, and you resist poison. Resisting poison doesn't really matter. Being immune to the poison status would be fantastic, but Sableye unfortunately is not. But normal fighting and psychic is a pretty interesting combination of types to be immune to. Of course, every Ghost type is immune to normal and fighting, which can be a real big pain in the butt for a lot of normal type attackers. But Psychic is a really interesting one as well, and that has kind of to do with the spin blocking potential of Sableye. Now, why is Sableye not more commonly seen, particularly as a spin blocker, as a Ghost type? Well, one reason is Levitate. The spin blockers, i.e. primarily going to be Gengar and Misdreavus, being immune to spikes, have an easier time switching in, and they can maintain the spikes advantage in that way. Say you have Skarmory versus your opponent's Skarmory and you're trading down spikes. Usually the person who spin blocks the best is going to win that spike trade, and Gengar and Misdreavus are both really, really good at maintaining the spikes advantage, particularly because they don't take spikes damage when they switch in. Obviously, Gengar's got really, really high special attack, so it applies a lot of offensive pressure, but Misdreavus has some interesting defensive capabilities, and its access to Perish Song and Mean Look is really nice. Now, Gengar gets that as well, but Misdreavus having higher special defense and HP does make a difference, as well as, or does it have higher HP? I can't remember. One of them has 60 and one of them has 65. I'm going to say Misdreavus has the higher of the two, and if that's wrong, correct me in the comments. But the other thing that helps Misdreavus out is not being weak to Psychic, because two of the most prominent spinners in the tier, Starmie and Claydol, both have access to Psychic, both have Stab Psychic, which could be really, really dangerous when attacking into Gengar. But because Misdreavus is not weak to those, and it's got higher special bulk, it can leverage this Mean Look Parasong strategy a lot more effectively. Second reason is Will-O-Wisp. Despite receiving Will-O-Wisp in later generations, Sableye in Gen 3 does not have Will-O-Wisp. The ghost types that do have Will-O-Wisp would be Gengar, because he just gets it all, Dusclops, and Banette. Of course, Will-O-Wisp is a fantastic move. It's really, really good at crippling physical attackers, especially when you're able to switch in on so many potential physical attacks, i.e. normal and fighting type moves. So, yeah, the ghost types with Will-O-Wisp really, really good at punishing certain Pokemon, like, say, for example, Snorlax. Sableye not having access to that is not great. And if it did have access to it, I think it would actually be a lot better of a Pokemon. We would probably be discussing Sableye as being better than Dusclops if it did, but that's not the case. So why would we even use Sableye then over the other ghost types? Well, we kind of just talked about Knockoff and Recover as being obvious advantages, but those alone are not quite enough to justify slapping Sableye onto your team as a spin blocker. Instead, we're going to take a look at some key matchups that Sableye is kind of uniquely positioned to win. I guess not completely uniquely, but some Pokemon that can be a little bit troublesome for some teams, you need a way to deal with them, are listed here below. This is the Riz list, or the Pokemon that struggle with Baby Gronk. God, I hate my sense of humor. First, we have Snorlax, who is, in a sense, dealt with by certain ghost types. It depends on what the Snorlax set is, though. Snorlax will almost always be running a normal type move, whether that be Body Slam or Return or Double Edge is kind of up to the whims of the Snorlax user. But as for coverage, a lot of times Snorlax will be running Earthquake, and the levitating ghost types, i.e. Gengar and Misdreavus, do completely wall that. However, Snorlax also has access to Shadow Ball, which is super effective and will smash Gengar and Misdreavus if it hits them, especially if Snorlax is able to dodge a Will-O-Wisp burn, which, given that Will-O-Wisp is only 75% accurate in this generation, it's not completely out of the question. Sableye, though, by virtue of being a secondary dark type, is not weak to Shadow Ball, so the strongest move that Snorlax can really go for against it is Earthquake, which can be a little bit of a problem if you're allowing the Snorlax to boost up with Curse, but we do have some amount of counterplay that we can exert to stop Snorlax from going completely stupid against us. As well as being able to knock it off, and if we have Sand, or if the opponent's team has Sand, that could be really, really detrimental to Snorlax's ability to win in the end game. Although I wouldn't say that you necessarily need to have Sand in order to deal with Snorlax, but it is very nice to just chip into it. But it also is just nice for it to not be able to make progress as you kind of just sit in and do like peanut damage with your Seismic Toss with Sableye. The other Pokemon that is really of note here is Claydol. The standard Claydol set is usually running Psychic as its means of dealing with the spin blockers, I mean mostly Gengar. This is a reason why Misdreavus is considered a really good Claydol counter. I almost wanted to say a Gengar counter. I don't think that that's necessarily true, but I digress. One thing that Claydol can do to sort of change the matchup is to instead run Shadow Ball. Claydol with some significant attack investment and Shadow Ball instead of Psychic is threatening to 3-hit KO the Misdreavus, which is really important because Misdreavus is very, very dependent on being able to have 3 turns to do stuff. Whether that be to wake up from rest or to allow a Perish Song to kill the opposing trapped Pokemon. Misdreavus really, really needs 3 turns to do what it needs to do. So the Shadow Ball Claydol set is able to bypass any sort of issues that Misdreavus could give it. On the flip side, Sableye does not care if you have Shadow Ball because that's not super effective. Now, yes, Earthquake is still going to be able to hit the Sableye, and stab, attack, invested Earthquake can do a decent amount of damage to Sableye, but Sableye has some tricks up its sleeve that it can do to sort of pressure the Claydol and eventually win the 1v1. And if it has to use 16 recovers to get that Claydol to run out of Earthquakes to do it, it certainly can. Next we have Registeel, who is a Pokemon that is just generally not fantastic into Ghost types because its 2 attacking moves usually are Seismic Toss and Explosion, both of which are completely walled by Ghosts. I think Taunt Gengar is probably the best at handling Registeel, or maybe Taunt Misdreavus if you have that. While I'm not exactly sure... Whoops. I meant to loop that. Sorry. I hope you enjoy the Danganronpa music, by the way. Sorry, I lost my whole train of thought there. Yeah, Registeel is not fantastic into all Ghost types, especially the ones that have Taunt, because you can't even get the Thunder Wave off. It's not great into Sableye either, because Sableye can just kind of hit a knockoff and then kind of just trade into the Registeel with Seismic Tosses. Even Counter Registeel is not able to punish Sableye for going for Seismic Tosses, because Counter is still considered to be a fighting type move, so Ghosts are immune to it. And then lastly, I have Medicham here, and I'm not saying that Medicham is like uniquely bad into Sableye. Generally, a lot of the fighting types don't handle Ghost types well, but like Medicham in theory is one of the best fighting types at handling the Ghosts because it has the strongest Ghost coverage in the game, or at least as far as a fighting type goes. Thanks to its pure power, and also thanks to access to Shadow Ball, whereas all the other fighting types have to run HP Ghost. But take a look at this calc. A Adamant max attack Medicham Shadow Ball into our max Fizz Def Sableye is doing less than 40%. Most of the time, Sableye is going to be able to leverage its leftovers to avoid a 3-hit KO, which means that in theory, Sableye can 1v1 a Medicham. Now, if it's a choice-banded Medicham, then we're going to be taking more than half. But at least it'll be locked into Shadow Ball, which is significantly easier to switch into for a lot of defensive pieces on a team, primarily your Steel types, than a stab fighting type move from a choice-banded Medicham. So, yeah. You could replace Medicham here with, like, Machamp, or even Breloom, who all of which are not fantastic. And Sableye punishes the switches a lot more than, well, okay, arguably more than other Ghost types. Because knockoff, not very many Pokemon want to eat a knockoff. Whereas Will-O-Wisp, some Pokemon can afford to eat a Will-O-Wisp. Especially in the case of, like, a Fire-type Pokemon. But not that I'm saying you should switch your Fire-type, say, Moltres into a Gengar. But a lot of Pokemon can kind of handle Will-O-Wisp with some amount of success, like your Natural Cures, your Rest Pokemon, Special Attackers, etc. Whereas, yeah, Knockoff is just really, really difficult to switch into. So, that kind of gives us the concept of what we would want Sableye on our team for is to handle some combination of these types of Pokemon. There are some other Pokemon that Sableye has some decent matchups into as well, and we'll hopefully get into that with the replays. But for now, let's talk about the Sableye set. So here are Smogon's Sableye sets. Well, I mean, it only has sets available for NU and RU. Those tiers are quite a bit different from OU, so I don't know if they exactly correlate to how we would use Sableye in OU. But this set, which is used in RU, is going to be the most similar to what we're going to go for. You have your fixed damage moves with Seismic Toss and Nightshade. Toxic is a just really nice filler move to have, especially for a defensive Pokemon, especially one that has Recover. And then you have the choice of Knockoff or Shadow Ball. I'm going to tell you this. Shadow Ball, like, in theory, could be nice because Sableye is going to want to switch into the spinners of the tier, and Shadow Ball is going to be super effective on 2 of them, being Starmie and Claydol. But you just don't really do enough damage to justify, like, trading into those Pokemon, and they're going to oftentimes switch anyway. So I think that Knockoff is just going to be better suited for Sableye in OU. I don't know what is in RU that might justify Shadow Ball instead, but, you know, keep that in mind. So, yeah, this is basically what we're going to be adapting for OU usage. And this is the set that I've come up with, which is, I mean, virtually the same. I will say Seismic Toss is definitely better than Nightshade, because one of the things that we want Sableye to do is to be able to pressure Snorlax. And if we have Nightshade, we can't hit Snorlax, at least not after knocking it off. So, like, that's going to be kind of antithetical to the whole goal of Sableye. Yes, we are not going to be able to hit Ghost types with this Sableye set, really at all. We do have Knockoff, which can be kind of nice, but, like, Gengar is going to wall us because it doesn't get hit by Toxic or Seismic Toss. But, I mean, Sableye does not have to be our Gengar counter. Not at all. We can certainly find other Pokemon that can switch into the Gengar and handle it for us. So, this defensive investment, I'll be honest, we're kind of just maxing out the HP and then giving whatever we can to defense, because I want to have the 141. That outspeeds is completely false, by the way. This is, you may have noticed, perhaps, that I stole this from my Celebi slide, and I forgot to change that, but I'll explain that in a moment. But the defensive investment, the standard Curse Snorlax set with its Shadow Ball is not even quite going to be able to get the 4-hit KO on us with our Leftovers recovery. Now, if there's Sand in the equation, that slightly changes. That does have a somewhat reasonable chance to get a 3-hit KO. But that's kind of okay with us, because Sableye can get its knockoff off. It can go for a little bit of recover shenanigans, and then we're going to have the rest of our team to help us to not lose to the Snorlax. Against the standard Claydol, we're going to be taking less than 40% from Earthquake, which is pretty nice. It gives us the opportunity to go for a knockoff and then recover and then get our Toxic, and then we can go into the recover loop from there. And they're going to have to crit us, like, kind of back to back in order to consistently make progress, or they're going to have to like high roll crit with another high roll thereafter, or Sand is going to have to be involved. So yeah, all of those things, keep them in mind. And Jolly Dugtrio, the only way it's going to be able to kill this particular Sableye is if it max rolls twice in a row after we go for a knockoff on it, or if it gets a critical hit. But all that being said, I think that this is pretty nice. Now, you could run a little bit more defense investment if you go to max, then I think you guarantee that you're not going to die to Jolly Dugtrio. You may slightly alter the role for Claydol's Earthquake. The Shadow Ball Snorlax role virtually doesn't really change at all. But I think the speed is kind of important. It's not, I guess it's not completely necessary, but 141 is going to be 1 point faster than the common Swampert sets that are running mixed coverage. Particularly, I'm talking about standard defensive and standard offensive. Standard offensive maybe not because they like to speed creep Blissey, but standard defensive Swampert with Hydro Pump, Earthquake, and Ice Beam is going to be outsped, which means that we can get our Toxic off immediately, and then we can recover Loop because Hydro Pump, while it may be able to do more than half, we are going to be healing half first, which means that, yes, it's going to be outpacing the damage, but if it ever misses, then we're back to full, and you're going to have to hit pretty much all of them and use up all of your PP in order to kill the Sableye off with Hydro Pump. So that's kind of why I'm going with this 141. It's also nice for creeping some of the other base 50s that are hanging around in the tier, like Regirock and Registeel. Although, once again, those Pokemon like to run speed to creep Blissey, so may not actually be that valuable, but sometimes it may come in handy. So yeah, I mean, basically it's just for that one particular Swampert set. If you don't find value in that, then you could certainly just crank your defense to max, and then you don't have to worry about Dugtrio getting particularly lucky against you, even without a critical hit. As tempting as it may be, I would not like to stay in against special attackers with Sableye to like go for knockoffs and toxics on them, unless you're in a position where you can afford to do so, because Sableye takes a lot of damage on the special side. Yes, we are investing in the HP, but 50 HP, 65 defense uninvested is not very good, and Sableye is going to commonly fold in 2 hits to a lot of special attacks. So yeah, do not use Sableye to stay in on that Calm Mind Blissey and trade down with it, or to attempt to get a knockoff on Zapdos or something like that. It's just not going to be a winning proposition for you most of the time. And now our team structure. So this is Baby Gronk Arrow V5. So this is obviously a sort of V5 structure. Some would say that V5 has to have Milotic over Vaporeon. I'm a little bit more lax on that definition, although I do think that this is a very, very liberal definition of V5, because instead of Dugtrio, we have Aerodactyl. The two have a similar function. I will say that, being a trapper is really hard to replace, so I can't claim that Aerodactyl is 1-to-1 with Dugtrio, but Aerodactyl does have some small advantages over Dugtrio that make it at least an interesting option for the team. If you would rather have lead Dugtrio for this team and you want to do like a weather clear sort of thing, then that's totally fine as well. I've seen that work with this particular team, but I wanted to show off a slightly different variation. I will say, not having Dugtrio means that Heracross is a goddamn demon. You have to position your Skarmory or your Aerodactyl in such a way that the Heracross is not going to be able to just sweep your team. We do have some semblance of counterplay as well with Vaporeon, which we'll talk about when we get into the replays, or I guess when we talk about Vaporeon more particularly. But yeah, Baby Gronk is here to maintain spikes versus opposing Claydol teams, and it stops the team from immediately losing to Snorlax in the case that Skarmory gets trapped by Magneton. Lead CB Arrow is going to pressure a lot of the common leads like Zapdos, Tyranitar, and Arrow. Sorry, not Arrow. I guess kind of you pressure opposing Arrow leads because who wants to trade arrows or go for the speed tie on turn 1? But that was meant to say Mence. We don't quite one-shot Mence with a Intimidate debuffed Rock Slide. If we were an Adamant Arrow, we could, but I do think the speed matters for Aerodactyl. There are too many things that are running in the 360, 361 area now in the current ADV meta game that I'm not in favor of an Aerodactyl that is slower than 360. And Adamant Aerodactyl, unfortunately, only hits 359. So, keep that in mind. If in case you want to play this team and make changes. Rest Claydol is here to provide some longevity versus opposing Arrow teams and against opposing Stall. So, yeah, Claydol could sometimes be a little bit of an issue because Aerodactyl, if it gets a prediction right, like a Double Edge, then it only needs but so many Rock Slides in order to break the Claydol in the end game. But even if they manage to catch us with a, say, a Double Edge or a HP Bug, if the Arrow is forced to lock into Rock Slide later in the game, we could potentially get Claydol in and rest. And this is especially helpful in the case that they have Last Mon CB Aerodactyl. So, there you go. Vaporeon, I have chosen over my Milotic, who is from ABR's version of this team, to provide some wish support and to nix any Suicune win conditions. And I'm using my favorite Vaporeon set, which is Haze. I do not really like Roar that much. Part of the reason is because it has less PP, and the other part of the reason is that it does not help you out against last Pokemon boost sweepers, whereas Haze definitely does. And I think that because I'm foregoing a particular tech that Baby Gronk likes to run, which we'll show you in the replays, that it may be necessary to have Haze rather than Roar to help us in the Snorlax matchup, because yes, Baby Gronk is really good against Snorlax, but it's not necessarily able to completely 1v1 a Cursed Lax on its own. Unless it gets, like, extraordinarily lucky. Meaning that it never gets crit. But I digress. Livy Dunn here. If you're familiar with the Baby Gronk meme, you've probably heard the name Livy Dunn. I don't know anything about her other than she's a volleyball player from LSU. So, which is maybe more than the average person knows, but I don't know why she's associated with Baby Gronk, but I mean, you saw the comments from all those Discord denizens from the one of the previous slides. They're big on Livy Dunn, I guess. I guess Baby Gronk rizzed up Livy Dunn. I don't know what that really means, but go off, Baby Gronk. We have Aromatherapy to support our Rest Claydol, and it keeps Vaporeon and Baby Gronk from losing to Toxic Spam, particularly in the end game. And that's going to kind of do it for this sort of discussion of the team and of Baby Gronk and its place in the metagame. Now let's put our money where our mouth is and show off some replays. Yay, replays. Don't you just love replays? See, what I'm going to talk some inside baseball here, which you don't realize about my style of videos here, right? Is that I'm basically a Showdown Live commentator, but I have a little bit of a spin on it because who is going to watch Showdown Live content for ADV? Who's not just going to be watching Jim Cool instead, right? So my sort of strategy here as a content creator is to trick you into thinking that you're watching something else when really it's just Showdown Live stuff. Although I guess it's not exactly Showdown Live because I'm literally watching replays and not playing live. And in fact, I'm not even playing it all in this replay. This is I really love bagels. I know that's not what their name is, but I'm gonna stay light on the swearing. And Star Master, who is one of the ADV council members. This was played in Revival. I did a commentary of this on Revival tournaments that I definitely recommend that you check out. I will put it in the description, but this is one of the best Baby Gronk games I've ever seen. And this player, I really love bagels, is probably not running the Sableye set that I am specifically, but it's close enough, and it's such a good demonstration of Baby Gronk that I have to show it off. So let's get that music going and get this game going. So Mean Look Jinx versus a Fortress. This is a really strange matchup. I'm pretty sure that's HP Ghost on the Fortress. And just spoiler alert, the Jinx is going to completely just trade down with the Fortress here. It's going to allow itself to die to its own Perish Song, as 3 layers of spikes will go up. I'm not going to go so in-depth with this commentary. I'm just going to kind of give you the cliff notes as we get to the Baby Gronk hitting the field. Donphan is in, but now we're going to switch to the Claydol counter, which is our Sableye. Sableye getting a knockoff on Metagross. That's a choice-banded Metagross who is now not going to be able to do significant enough damage to this Donphan to really pressure it out, which means that an Earthquake is coming down. Suicune is going to come in to be the offensive pressure to force that Donphan to switch out. But we have a Blissey who is going to be able to, at least in part, neutralize the Suicune. If it's going to force a rest and then allow a switch to a Phaser, that's kind of the idea. Or it could even go for Toxic and force that rest that way. There's a Vaporeon here, so I really love bagels, and I kind of have a similar sort of philosophy of defensive Vaporeon plus Ghost on a team is a good idea. And here comes another member of the Riz list right here, Snorlax. Metagross is going to blow up in the face of Sableye in order to catch something switching in. It catches the Donphan, which I think is probably fine if you're I really love bagels here, because Donphan was primarily your Metagross answer. Sableye is going to just kind of recover up. It's waiting for the Snorlax to get to +2 because this particular Sableye has a kind of interesting dynamic with a cursing Snorlax. Rather than Toxic as the last move, it's running Psych Up. That's going to copy the boost from the Curselax, which means that Snorlax is effectively not going to be able to make progress against this Sableye. Starmaster knew that, so he ended up switching to Dugtrio, who is not able to get that 2-hit KO, like I just said on the previous slide with the sort of defensive investment of the Sableye. Not able to really do much. Because Sableye knocked that Choice Band off, it's going to just be able to live. And I really love Bagels is going to play this pretty safe and just kind of recover away. You've got more recovers than Dugtrio does Earthquakes, and if Dugtrio runs out of Earthquakes, then you simply just beat it. Starmaster knows this, is trying to mix in some Aerial Aces to preserve some Earthquake PP, but I really love Bagels catches a Aerial Ace from the Dugtrio, and now Dugtrio is in range to die from a Seismic Toss because Dugtrio has ridiculously low HP. And Starmaster's just going to forfeit right there. The remaining 3 Pokemon on this team do not love to face Sableye here. That Suicune will come in and get knocked off, which means it is not getting any chip healing progress, which means that it's going to be forced to use up its rests early, which means that Vaporeon is going to be able to just roar it around, because Claydol is there, you can simply go to your Sableye to stop it from being able to spin spikes away or really just do anything. And yeah, same thing with Snorlax. You're just going to be able to stop all of that. Presumably, I really love Bagels has some way to stop a last mon boost sweeper as well. I don't know what his last is on this team, but kudos to him and very well scouted. You found probably the god matchup for Baby Gronk here. If you had a fighting type Pokemon on Star Master's side, that's the only way that could have been even better for Sableye, but there we are. I hope you guys don't get tired of me saying Baby Gronk instead of Sableye here. I think it's funny, all right? So you're going to have to put up with that. But this is actually me playing. I'm Agency Pyramids. Shout out to the Agency. 1658 gaming with this Sableye team. Some disclosure here is that I was actually prepping this team to use in Revival. I didn't actually end up getting to use it because I beat the opponent that I was going to use it against 2-0. And I was planning to bring that as my Game 3 bring. So there you go. A little bit of a subtle flex. Not really. It was a completely blatant flex, but we're going to move past that. I'm playing against somebody who's got like... this is like a YouTube link without the youtube.com. So I don't know what that is. But here's Hariyama, who is a fantastic switch in for my Sableye. I was willing to let the Sableye get knocked off there in case Hariyama went for it, but usually Hariyama does not want to stay in versus a Aerodactyl, which could be Choice Banded HP Fly, which would do significant damage to it. I'm able to get a Spike up, which allows me to get my Sableye in to do some sort of risk management against that Fortress. I can just continue to spike up and then go to Sableye and stop the Fortress from being able to spin. My opponent realizes what's going on and is just going to, frankly, go for more spikes. I go for a knockoff there in case my opponent stays in to get a third spike, and I just don't want that Fortress to be making any sort of progress. If I'm able to knock it off, then like I'm going to win the game in the long run. It's kind of funny because their whole strategy is based around knocking off the Skarmory and then allowing the Fortress to like just spin forever against Skarmory. But I'm kind of flipping that dynamic on its head here. I'm able to get Aerodactyl in on a Celebi recover turn, which allows me to go for a hidden power flying, which does a decent amount of chip to the Fortress. Now that 3 layers are up, though, my Sableye is taking a decent chunk of damage for staying in, but my opponent will stay in with Fortress and take Seismic Toss damage there, which I don't think is the right play. Fortress HP is super valuable, and if you're able to stop the Sableye at any point in this game, then that could be really big for you. I'm going to trade knockoffs here. Usually, if you can get a second knockoff in a matchup, then you are winning really hard. But, yeah. The reason why I think that's good is because Hariyama is a little bit of a pain in the ass for my team, because I don't want to get knocked off on anything, really. But my Sableye getting knocked off is not the end of the world because I have Recover, so I can just keep my Sableye healthy. Blissey's going to go for Wish here. I'm kind of forced to go for Seismic Toss because I really, really cannot let the Hariyama come back in and get all that health back. I am going to stay in with my Sableye, and I go for Toxic here, which will force the Celebi to switch, but it also could have caught any sort of potential switch in for my opponent. Finally, I reveal Claydol, who's going to Rapid Spin. I'm fine staying in on the Umbreon. That's totally cool with me. In fact, it made a lot of sense for me to stay in there because I need to, once again, not allow that Hariyama to receive a Wish. Uh, but I can kind of just reset my position here with the Blissey. Going for Seismic Toss, of course, again, stop that Hariyama from coming in. And as long as I maintain that pressure, I'm just going to win. Because I have 3 layers of spikes. They've revealed 5 grounded Pokemon. And they're all super duper passive. So they really, really just cannot handle all of this. My Skarmory's, I think I clicked Drill Peck with it there. I'm going to Roar now, which could be really bad because Hariyama could come in. But rather than allow Hariyama to get a knockoff on anything, I'm going to switch to Sableye and just accept that I got unlucky there with the Wish going on to that Hariyama. But their last is Swampert, which is a team of completely grounded Pokemon, so they're getting punished super duper hard for switching every time, so that's really, really bad. Sableye is in here. If this is not a Refresh Pert, then my Toxic is extremely threatening, but I'm just going to go for Seismic Toss because 2 Seismic Tosses can get there. Ice Beam comes down for quite a lot of damage, but yeah, my opponent realizes that this is kind of a losing effort because Sableye is completely walling that Hariyama, not going to allow it to get another knockoff this game. The Umbreon is really, really limited in its ability to do, like, virtually anything. Yes, it kind of pursuit traps the Claydol, but as you saw, me switching the Claydol out only took 34% damage, and I have Rest, so I can simply Rest and then switch the Claydol out, and then Blissey can just heal it back up. So all of that is just a brutal matchup here. And yeah, this team for my opponent, I have seen some types of teams like it. I think that really what you would like is Salamence as a Wish user here, so that you don't have 6 grounded Pokemon and you're getting completely owned by Spikes plus Spin Block. Especially in the case of Spin Blocker that's not Gengar and not going to completely fold to Umbreon. So that could give you some amount of longevity here, but I do think that Sableye against this particular style of team, which is relying on 40 plus Umbreon, is just brutal. We'll switch the music up as we get into the next battle here. It's a battle of similar avatars here, which is kind of interesting. I'm going to go for an Earthquake straight up against the Tyranitar, because there are a lot of Tyranitar nowadays who are just going for DD turn 1, regardless of what is in front of it. And if that was the case, then Aerodactyl is just smoking the opposing Tyranitar. It also is just good damage because a DD Tyranitar is really, really difficult for this team to deal with. I acknowledge, yeah, BKC Tar or Mixtar would have completely smoked me right here, but you know, sometimes you just got to play a little fast and loose. My opponent stays in, coping that I am not a jolly Aerodactyl, but I am, so it doesn't matter. Salamence will come in. I sort of assumed that it might want to go for another Dragon Dance there, because I thought this might be slop, but so I switched Skarmory in, and I get super duper hard punished for it. I probably should have went to Blissey, all things considered, but, you know, sometimes you got to trust your gut, and your gut's wrong every now and then, so just things happen. Vaporeon is a decent Salamence check, but I don't have Ice Beam, so I'm going to have to switch up, and we're going to get Livy Dunn in here with a or I don't think I have Modest Ice Beam actually, but with an Ice Beam here, I'm going to just finish off this Mixed Ments, and then they're going to reveal Aerodactyl. I do have a Rock Resist. It's Claydol. It's not the most fantastic Rock Resist versus Aerodactyl, but if I can get it in on a predicted Rock Slide, that's great. I go for an aggressive switch to Skarmory here, thinking that my opponent would switch out, but they just stay in. I don't know if they were like basically just giving up with that play, because Claydol staying in and going for a Psychic would have been devastating, or if they just read my life, but it is what it is. We'll go to Livy Dunn here. Trying to bait an explosion. Doesn't work out for me. But Baby Gronk is in, and it does really well into Registeel, who can't really touch us at all. Knockoff was free there, and honestly, if I was smart, I probably would just keep knocking off forever and ever, because Registeel's going to have to switch eventually, and me being able to get another knockoff would have been fantastic. I don't even recall what I did there, but Swampert is in. With this team, it does seem like it is slop, but the person who's running it doesn't really understand the proper sets to put on the team. You're supposed to have a DD Salamence as your win condition, but okay, they just opted for mixed, I guess. And this should have been an Endeavor pert, but instead it is a standard offensive pert, I think. So, yeah. They get a pretty unfortunate crit there. If I get crit again, I will just lose my Vaporeon, but I mean, you know, if you get crit twice in a row, I guess you kind of deserve to lose, huh? But my Vaporeon is kind of eating away at Earthquake PP here. There is always an avenue for me to win the game with Blissey if this Swampert doesn't happen to have Focus Punch. But also, if I bleed this out of Earthquakes, it does not have a good move to hit Vaporeon, and I can simply just beat it down with Surf. So, yeah, this is the pace of this team. Don't get it twisted. You are not going to be playing fast-paced games with this team. So, those of you who are more offensively inclined, this is probably not the team for you. But those of you who are more defensively inclined, such as myself, you'll love this team. I go to Livy Dunn here, who is going to eat a Thunder Wave and get healed all the way back up to full. My sort of thought process is that the only way they punish my Livy Dunn switch is if they go for Explosion, and if they go for Explosion with Registeel, then I don't see virtually any sort of switch in for Vaporeon anymore. Speaking of, I'm able to get a Toxic off on Swampert, which means that Vaporeon can kind of just sit back and wish up and make sure that it's really healthy to take on the Aerodactyl afterwards. We didn't see the speed investment come into play there, but it was possible that my Sableye would have outsped that Swampert if I wasn't paralyzed, and that would have been a really nice Toxic to get off, but I get it off anyway, because my opponent went for Earthquake, which is kind of strange. Hydro Pump would have done a lot more damage, and yes, you catch Vaporeon, but like, how much progress are you making against Vaporeon, really? I guess if you get a critical hit to follow up, then, or on the switch, then that could be really good for you as a Swampert, but I don't know. I don't think it really matters. They do reveal Focus Punch there, but I'm just going to go for Surf because I was never going to get any more HP than what I have right here. I can go for Protect to scout the attack from the Aerodactyl. They lock into a Rock Slide, which means that I could certainly just go Claydol here. And I get critically hit, which is unfortunate. I'm able to land my Psychic, which is quite nice, but if I get flinched or crit here, then I'm going to lose my Claydol. Except they get a low enough roll that I might be able to just rest and get out of this. But no, then they high roll thereafter. So that means that Vaporeon is going to have to dodge a flinch. And it does. So we're all right there. And my opponent was not able to cheese the win with Aerodactyl. Presumably their last Pokemon. I think on this squad it would be Raikou. Is just going to straight up lose in a 1v1 to Blissey. Unless it super duper hexes, which maybe could have been played for. And then Registeel, of course, is just not going to be able to do literally anything to Sableye. I could just stay in and just Toxic over and over, or knock off over and over until they get the switch, Or I guess I could go for Seismic Tosses to just beat down that Registeel. There's also, of course, my own Aerodactyl, which is a super duper free win versus these last two, if it is Registeel and Raikou. So, yeah, pretty solid. We've got a lot of good tools versus Slop with this team. You just need to be careful about allowing, if this was an Endeavor Swampert, allowing that to get itself down low enough that its endeavors are actually like threatening to do a lot to your Vaporeon and your Blissey. All right, my next game here is against this guy, Spammin53, who is frequently towards the top of ladder. I think, where are they at? 1653. All right, where am I at? 1566. You know, sometimes we do a little bit of trolling and lose our elo. But this game here, we're up against Regirock. I do not want to take a trade into Regirock. Yes, Earthquake could do a decent amount of damage, but getting Thunder Waved or Rock Slid for my troubles is not worth it. I managed to find the Claydol switch right there with my Sableye, which is fantastic. And I'm able to get a knockoff on the Charizard switching in, which is pretty nice. I guess on this version of the team, I had Fortress instead of my Skarmory, which is... There's some advantages to having Fortress here. Double Spinner is kind of nice to have, and the synergy between Fortress and Claydol is understated in this metagame. But I do think that overall Skarmory with the Roar is better. But if you want to try something different, I've got an option here for you. I went for a Seismic Toss, kind of anticipating the Charizard to want to go for a substitute there. That was kind of a mistake, because Vaporeon would have been plenty fine as a switch-in, even if the Charizard managed to get its substitute. But that does allow me the opportunity to potentially just get the kill straight up with Double Edge with my Claydol, or my Aerodactyl, so it's not all bad. I kind of go for a crazy prediction of going for that Earthquake there as they switched to Claydol, which didn't pay off for me, but they did have a Metagross in the back, which is partly what I was trying to catch. Unfortunately, they end up blowing up my Fortress, so no spikes for me. But I managed to get my Sableye in versus Claydol. I'm forcing it to click Earthquake here, which is allowing me to switch into my own Claydol. I could have switched back to Sableye there, which would have been really, really fire, but I managed to kill that Claydol anyway by sacrificing the Claydol of my own. I do go for a switch to Sableye here, trying to catch Boom, but unfortunately I don't. I find Celebi instead, but it isn't all doom and gloom for me, because Sableye is chip healing back up. It may potentially be able to live another hit eventually, but not right now. I don't have HP Bug. I have HP Flying, so I'm not able to kill off that Celebi, but I am able to leave it in range for Ice Beam to pick up the kill, which is great. And my opponent reveals last Mon Gyarados. I'm going to go to Vaporeon here, who I don't have Roar, but I do have Haze. So I am going to be able to sort of play around this Gyarados here. Now that I've revealed Haze, honestly, I should just be hazing literally every time that they Dragon Dance. In fact, I should probably just be hazing straight up. But whatever the case is, I should be winning usually with this Vaporeon. Though I do need to be a little bit careful that I don't end up in a position where I run out of PP. I shouldn't run out of hazes before my opponent runs out of Dragon Dances, as long as I don't play like an idiot. But I am playing a little bit like an idiot by going for surfs. I don't think I should be going for surfs at all in hindsight. Now, I'm not going for them right now, but yeah. This is the joy of Haze Vaporeon. There are some matchups where Vaporeon should just lose because your opponent boosts, and that Vaporeon can kind of just win instead by being able to just Haze. I managed to predict a Dragon Dance and go for a Haze there. I could even do it again if I wanted to. Instead, I went for a Surf. It didn't really need to go for Surf there. It doesn't really get me anything. But my opponent is going to kind of just waste a turn there by going for Substitute. Once again, I don't think I need to really go for Surf at all, especially because my opponent had some double Dragon Dances that I was able to save some extra Haze PP by getting rid of them. If I managed to get predicted that I was going for Haze, like say by this hidden power, whatever, and instead went for Haze there, like I don't really lose that much for doing that, so kind of whatever. Surf there doesn't really make any sense at all. I should have just went for Haze or Wish. Because now I'm putting myself kind of in a position where I have to go for a Wish. And now I have to protect if I don't want to die to a critical hit. If my opponent went for Haze, or sorry, Dragon Dance there, then they can potentially have a crit out thereafter. Should just go for Haze here. Perfect. I'm stabilizing the position. But yeah, I should just be going for Haze. There you go. That Haze was wasted, but my opponent has 18 Dragon Dances and I have 35 Hazes. It's going to take a lot of outplaying for my opponent to preserve any Dragon Dances. And in order to do that, he's either going to have to use up all of his substitutes, or he's going to have to burn through his Hidden Power and Earthquake PP, which is fine by me. If he runs out of Earthquake and Hidden Power PP on my Vaporeon, then he can't use it against my Blissey. So that's totally fine. A crit there could have killed me, of course. But I don't know. I mean, if you're playing to have to get a crit against a defensive team, like sometimes you will just get it, but it's not a fantastic position to be in, right? I go for a Surf there. That Surf on turn 69, nice, is actually not nice. I don't think I should be going for Surfs really at all at this stage anymore. I can save them for when my opponent is really just given up on the Dragon Dance plan. Like, this is a really stable position for me. Well, I get critically hit there, and I went for a Surf, and this is where, like, things can get really bad for me, because, you know, another crit is going to smoke me. My opponent has the opportunity to try to outplay me and go for a, say, like a second Dragon Dance while I go for Protect. And that would put me super duper low with my Vaporeon. Fortunately, they don't go for that play, which kind of keeps me in the game here. They could have potentially swung the entire momentum in their favor if they had went for that. Just a methodical game at this stage here. Continuing to haze away all those boosts. Like, the other thing to keep in mind here is that if this Gyarados runs out of Dragon Dances and it's neutral, then Blissey can just kind of wall. Now, I go for a switch to Blissey there, kind of for no reason. It ends up basically forcing me to sack my Sableye. I cannot really afford to go to Vaporeon there, because if he boomed on that, then I super duper just lose the game. So that Blissey switch really made no sense from me. I'll be honest. I should have just stayed in with Vaporeon. In fact, I should be more willing to go for Protects without the Wish. I have way more Protects than I do Wishes. So, like, I can afford to go for some. Just raw. And I think I'm going to realize that eventually. I'm able to haze, and that resets my Vaporeon's attack stat, so that's really nice. Doesn't really matter, of course. But every protect that I'm getting against, say, like a raw hidden power is really, really good. Basically, my win condition is I have to run this Gyarados out of moves, which is kind of interesting why my opponent is not going for substitutes here. Substitutes completely sort of negate any sort of progress that I get. That was not a great surf for me because it doesn't really get me anything. I'm going to be forced to go for Protect here. My opponent should go for another Dragon Dance. They actually don't. Haze that away. I need to be a little bit careful. I go for a Protect there, which is probably a decently fine move to make. But my opponent went to Charizard. I don't think that Charizard makes a lot of sense for my opponent here either. Yeah, it ends up wasting some of my PP, but you lose the entire Charizard, which probably wouldn't have done anything in the end game there. But like, was that worth it for 2 PP essentially? I'm not sure. Or I guess 3 PP because the switch in counts for some amount of PP usage. But as this Gyarados gets lower on its moves, I may be able to sneak a Blissey switch in eventually. Like if I get it in on a raw substitute, that could be nice. But I need to just make sure that I don't lose with my Vaporeon here. Don't lose the Vaporeon to the Gyarados. I also need to be careful that Blissey is not the last Mon versus the Gyarados. Like I don't have any Surfs anymore to handle the Regirock, because if that's the case, then I could just end up tying the game because Regirock could go for a boom into my last Mon Blissey. So yeah, I also do need to save a Surf. I am out of wishes though, which is not good for me. But I do find that I play decently well when my options are constrained. And I do end up making a lot of decent plays here. That Protect was not the best Protect to get, but I am able to haze away some damage there. I get that play wrong as well. I am going to haze here though. Yes, because I'm sticking to my guns here. That's one more Dragon Dance. I need to catch that Dragon Dance with a haze. I do manage to just like go for it there, but my opponent has run out of hidden powers, and he's down to his last Earthquake. I'm just going to use up my hazes, which I had more hazes than my opponent had moves left on Gyarados, so I was always just going to be able to run the Gyarados out of moves there. And I can switch into Blissey on the Earthquake if he goes for it. As long as I don't get critically hit, I'm fine. I am going to soft-boiled my Blissey up here. My opponent is not willing to boom the Regirock there, probably because they don't die to any particular move from me. But I'm going to go to Vaporeon here, who is going to live a Rock Slide. Very nice. I love Vaporeon. And I can go for a Surf there. I do need to save my Surfs. I need to have at least one to be able to handle the Regirock. But I'm kind of fine to stay in with this Vaporeon here. I managed to waste the last Earthquake, so I'm able to eventually switch to my Blissey. I am going for a haze there in case my opponent wanted to switch to Regirock on that turn. But now that I've got Blissey in versus the Gyarados, I should just win the game. I will just Seismic Toss until Gyarados dies. If they switch to Regirock, they just lose. And if they let the Gyarados die, then Regirock is in. The only thing it could really do to maybe bring the game back is like go for Thunder Wave and like super duper paraflinch my Blissey out, which is not very likely. And even if they do all of that, Vaporeon is faster and will just kill with Surf. So, yeah, they spare us kind of playing the game out for another 20 or so turns. So, thank you for that. But yeah, that was a kind of crazy endgame. But if you want to talk about crazy endgames, because I know that Sableye didn't really do that much in this game, let's load up this last game. Yes, it's going to be a long one. It's a Tetrafolium video. It's always going to be a long one. But yeah, I will mention this particular Sableye. I kind of mentioned earlier another move slot that could be used instead of Toxic. If you're paying attention, that'll give you a hint for what I have on this particular Sableye for this particular replay. But if you weren't paying attention, then you're just going to have to sit and watch. Lead Milotic oftentimes has Hypnosis. And with an Ice Beam click turn 1, I'm pretty sure this does have Hypnosis, which is indicating, offensive Milotic. I'm going to go to Vaporeon because I don't particularly mind if I get Hypnosis by this Milotic. I go for Wish, which doesn't really do anything for me. I will go for Surf, though. Kind of force this Milotic to use up some PP. I don't care really about the prospect of Milotic staying in because I could just switch to Blissey, who's perfectly fine. I managed to get some Seismic Toss damage onto this itemless Metagross. I thought it was maybe Choice Band, but instead it is a Lumberry Metagross with Agility. So I managed to get Skarmory in, which is perfect because I had the Spike down. I roar it away. It's going to take some more chip damage. I'm able to get the Blissey in, who is going to be able to finish off that Salamence, who is trying to get a flinch into maybe a Hidden Power Flying, but it didn't work out for him. This Metagross is going to boom into my Skarmory, which is not fantastic for me. I'm going to reveal Sableye at this stage, but they go to Blaziken. I go for Knockoff, trying to sort of punish that Blaziken for staying in if it so chose to. Fire Blast would do a lot, but I mean, it's not the end of the world. I had the whole Vaporeon to switch into as well. My opponent is going to maybe try to get an Ice Beam freeze on my Blissey. There, I opted to go for a Soft Boiled rather than kill the Milotic, which is going to come back to bite me because this Milotic is Rest, which is very strange. It's kind of cool because it synergizes with Marvel Scale, but like you lose that immediate recovery, so you're going to lose a lot of turns here. It kind of doesn't matter because my Blissey is not going to be able to 1v1 and kill the Milotic. So, yeah. I'm going to use the free turn, though, to get an Aromatherapy to wake my Vaporeon up. And I'm just going to slam some Surfs in. I'm going to try to Sleep Sack the Claydol, but they go for an Ice Beam and critically hit my Claydol, which is really, really bad for me. If I was able to Sleep Sack the Claydol there, then as long as this Milotic is in, I could just switch back and forth between Blissey and Vaporeon, and this Milotic would not be able to make any amount of progress at all. But now that they've got my Claydol so low, they're not super duper incentivized to go for like another, like they're it's hard for them to go for another Hypnosis because they really, really want to catch the Claydol switch. I'm going to switch to Claydol on this turn, and it gets Slept Sacked, which is perfect for me, because now I can go for my sort of game plan there. I figured that they were going to go for Rest there, so I got the prediction wrong, but ended up getting the right result. The unfortunate reality is if I get frozen on Vaporeon, I am going to have to use Aromatherapy, which is going to allow this Milotic to go for another Hypnosis on something else, but it only has 5 Ice Beams left. And it actually stays in without resting to allow me to Seismic Toss and kill it. Blaziken's going to come in here. So it better have something that can deal with this Vaporeon. I go for a Surf as the Blaziken gets a Swords Dance off, which is not cool, but I do get the Haze, and Blaziken's not going to be able to do virtually that much to me in that case. I'm going to Haze again. All right, great. Blaziken's got a Salic boost. Don't really mind. I can go for a Haze to nullify that boost, and then I can get Sableye in. Force this Blaziken to click Fire Blast if it has it. It seems like it does not, which means that, yeah, Sableye is just going to beat it there. Even if they manage to beat my Sableye, though, as long as I was able to break the substitute, I would have been able to follow up with my Aerodactyl and get the revenge kill. They reveal Lastmon Snorlax here. My Claydol is still asleep, but remember, I do have Aromatherapy on Blissey. I can wake it up if I feel like I need it. And there we go. This is the move that I was talking about earlier. Psych Up. So Psych Up is going to copy the Curse boost from that Snorlax, which means that the Snorlax is not going to be able to really functionally break through the Sableye without a critical hit. Which means that we are going to eventually be able to PP stall this Snorlax out if that's fine. What I'm playing for right now, though, is to force this Snorlax to click Rest, assuming it has it. If it doesn't have it, well, then Sableye is just going to win the one-on-one anyway. They're going to keep switching to Jolteon here. They would love for me to kill their Jolteon and get to Lastmon Lax, but even if that happens, I still have plenty of room to win the game against the Lastmon Lax, so that's fine. Their Jolteon is dead to any sort of switch into Spikes now, but I can't force them to switch, and I don't want to switch to anything else, so I'm going to just take the kill with Blissey. So now they have Snorlax in. I'm going to go to Sableye. They're going to go for the Curse boosts. They're playing to get a critical hit on my Sableye at some point with, I don't know if that's Hidden Power Steel or Hidden Power Bug or what Hidden Power, but I assume it's one of those two. I can just keep recovering. If he burns all of his hidden powers playing for crits right now, well, then he's just not going to have any moves to attack with, so that's fine by me. That's why I'm going for a Seismic Toss there, because I'm not scared of getting crit by +1 Lax. I am scared of giving up too much damage, though, to a +2 Lax, so I am going to sort of Psych Up as Snorlax gets like 2 stages higher than my Sableye is. I guess we're going to let this track play out. Why not? But now that the Snorlax has been incapacitated with Rest, I can come in with the Vaporeon and go for Haze. Now we get to play this song and dance over again. And I'm just going to loop this out. My opponent says, Lamau, nice strat, you got me. With a little kissy face. I don't know if they're being genuine, if they think that was actually a nice strat, or if they're just really mad about this turn of events, but it is what it is. I thought it was cool, obviously. Now, this is a really interesting way to use Sableye in conjunction with, like, Haze to beat something like a Lastmon Snorlax here, which my opponent is just going to, I guess, kind of stall out while we're waiting for my opponent to realize that they have no kind of chance to win the game from here. I'm going to sort of explain why I went with Toxic over Psych Up for Sableye for the final version of this team. And that has to do with... they forfeit right there. That has to do with how much Toxic kind of forces progress against things that want to switch into Sableye. So, like, Skarmory, for example, does not like to switch into Sableye because it doesn't like to get its leftovers knocked off. Something like, for example, like Suicune would rather switch into Sableye, right? And getting a Toxic off on the Suicune kind of forces the issue there. Gives me plenty of time to use Blissey or Vaporeon to help myself out. And especially if it's a offensive Suicune, then that's really good. It also really helps me out against things like Endeavor Swampert. Endeavor Swampert might want to switch into Sableye. Like, say I get a knockoff on something that they're willing to knock off Sack, and then they think that they can sort of punish me by going to the Swampert, and Torrent Boosted Surf is going to hit, or a Hydro Pump is going to hit like a truck into Sableye. Well, if I manage to catch him with a Toxic on the switch, then like that kind of invalidates their whole Swampert set. Especially since I have Vaporeon to nullify the Hydro Pump. It's really good into Claydol, forcing the issue against that. It means that Claydol does not have nearly as many chances to crit and get out of the situation. It means I can save some recovers for certain other threats. It means that I can recover Loop into a lot of other things, and other sort of defensive Pokemon that don't have means of getting rid of their status are also going to be screwed. Like, say, for example, the standard defensive Swampert set with no refresh. So, all of that being said, that is Baby Gronk in ADV. I hope you were entertained by the little story of how Sableye became Baby Gronk. And I hope you like the Sableye team. I'm not going to lie, Sableye is kind of not that good into matchups where you don't see one of the Riz list Pokemon. So if your opponent doesn't have Snorlax or it doesn't have Claydol, it's really hard to get a lot of value out of Sableye, but it still has knockoff, and especially if you have the Toxic variant of Sableye, like you could still land a Toxic on something and get value that way. Like, that's never like that bad. So there you go. But I encourage you to play around. If you want to make some changes to the team, go ahead. Why not? It's your life. You can do what you want. And have fun, everybody. So we'll see you all for the next video, which I'll probably take a request. I'll maybe put a poll out for like whichever two Pokemon seem to be the most popularly requested. So if you're at this point in the video, you haven't left a comment yet, or even if you just want to leave a second comment, why not? Tell me what you want to see in a future Pokemon and ADV video. We'll see you then.